1393, the Mobile Workforce State Income Tax Simplification Act of 2017, is an important bipartisan bill that will help workers and small businesses across the country, large businesses also. As the proud sponsor of this legislation in both the 110th and 111th Congresses, I'm very familiar with how hard legislators on both sides of the aisle have worked since then to bring this bill to this point, and I want to thank the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Congressman Bob Goodlatte, for ushering this bill to the House to this point. And I'm asking my colleagues to please vote in favor of this legislation. H.R. 1393 would provide for a uniform and easily administrable law that will simplify the patchwork of existing inconsistent and confusing state rules. It would also reduce administrative costs to the states and lessen compliance burdens on consumers. Take my home state of Georgia as an example. If an Atlanta-based employee of a St. Louis company travels to headquarters on a business trip once a year, that employee would be subject to Missouri tax even if the annual visit only lasts for 1 day. However, if that employee travels to Maine, her trip would only be subject to tax if her trip lasts for 10 days. If she travels to New Mexico on business, she would have only to be subject to tax if she was in the state for 15 days. Acuity Brands is a leading Georgia-based lighting manufacturer that employs over 1,000 associates and has over 3,200 associates nationwide who travel extensively across the country for training, conferences, and other business. In a letter in support of a prior nearly identical version of this bill, Richard Reese, Acuity's executive vice president, writes that current state laws are numerous, varied, and often changing, requiring that the company expend significant resources merely interpreting and satisfying states' requirements. He concludes that unified, clear rules and definitions for non-resident reporting and withholding obligations would undoubtedly improve compliance rates and would strike the correct balance between state sovereignty and ensure that America's modern mobile workforce is not unduly encumbered. We should heed the concerns of Acuity and numerous other businesses across the country by enacting H.R. 1393 into law. With over 57, if I could get an additional minute.
Gentleman's time has expired.
If I could get an additional minute.
I grant the gentleman an additional minute.
Thank you.
Gentleman is recognized.
With over 57 co-sponsors during this Congress, it's clear that the Mobile Workforce State Income Tax Simplification Act of 2017 is an idea whose time has come. I thank my colleagues for their work on this bill, and in particular, Congressman Bishop for his leadership on this bill in the 115th Congress. He's carried the torch for our esteemed former colleague, the late Howard Coble, who passed this bill out of the House last in the 112th Congress. I also thank our staffs who have worked tirelessly to build support for this legislation along bipartisan lines. This bill is a testament to the good that can come from working across the aisle on bipartisan tax fairness reforms. I'm optimistic that the passage of H.R. 1393 augurs well for the passage of other e-fairness legislation, which is critical to countless small businesses across the country during this Congress. In closing, I urge my colleagues in the Senate to bring this bill up.
I grant the gentleman additional 30 seconds.
I thank the gentleman. I urge my colleagues in the Senate to bring this bill up for a vote soon. This country's employees and businesses deserve quick action.